So there's a much better way to say exactly this. All right. So that's something you can definitely keep in mind, and you can use that to improve the way you introduce yourself. All right. So now let me tell you why myself is wrong. When we're talking about the word myself, all right. I'm so sorry. I can hear an echo. Okay, I think it's better now. So sorry about that. All right. So when we're talking about introducing ourselves, when we use the word myself usually means on my own, without anyone else, without anyone's help. So imagine me saying on my own, Keisha. Would that make sense? Would that make a lot of sense? Not really, right? So that's why instead you want to say I am Keisha or my name is Keisha. So that's a much better way to communicate. All right. So remember this every time you're communicating, always say, I am Keisha or my name is Keisha. Of course, you will use your own name and that will make more sense. But that's a much better way to introduce yourself because it sets the tone for the way you will communicate with anyone. All right. Anyone who's new and is just joining us and has any questions, please put them in the chat so we can discuss it and talk about that much more. Now, another thing that happens a lot is that we're not sure what we should say about ourselves. And that's where we face certain challenges. Because when we're not sure about what we should talk about or which parts we should mention, sometimes that causes a little bit of a gap or a challenge. And if we seem confused about what we do and what we like doing or what our work profile is like, the other person will definitely be confused. So we need to ensure that we are clear about it so that the other person can be clear about it as well. So this is something that takes some practice and it will take a little bit of work, but you should work on something that is commonly known as an elevator pitch. Now, what is an elevator pitch? It's very simply, if you meet someone in an elevator, you have to introduce yourself to them. You don't have a lot of time, right? So you have to very quickly tell them who you are and what you do. So it should be a very short introduction, which gives a very clear idea of who you are, what you do. The idea of an introduction is for you to understand and explain to the other person what you're doing, and they can understand how you can help them and how they can help you. So that's something that you definitely do want to keep in mind. So clarity of thought when it comes to explaining what you do, how you do it, is very, very important. Now, let me give you an example. Let me tell you my elevator pitch or my very short introduction. So I would say, hello, my name is Keisha. I have been with Clapingo for the past 3 years. I lead the quality content and curriculum teams, and I am basically managing all teaching operations at Clapingo. Now, you get a very clear idea of everything that I do, what I do, how I do it. This would give you a very simple, very short understanding of what I do, right? Similarly, you need to work on what you do, what is best, how you can best describe your work profile. So your name, how long you've been with the company or in that particular industry. So it shows how experienced you are. And third, what your current role is like, what all you do within that. So this can really help you get your point across and introduce yourself really, really effectively to anyone, whether it's a client, whether it's other colleagues, other people from other departments, anyone you can anyone that you work with, you can introduce yourself very, very easily. All right. So this is something you must definitely keep in mind while you're introducing yourself. Right. Now, try to avoid a lot of technical terms that people don't understand, because that won't help them quickly understand what you do. Right. So remember that whenever you're introducing yourself, even in general conversation, the only technical terms, I know it scares a lot of people, the technical terms, the jargon, all these business vocabulary words that we come up with all the time. I know that's something that confuses many of us, but remember, it's not really required. The only words you should be aware of or that you should be using are those that are common to your industry or your department. So something that is more related to the work that you do and something that is very commonly used. Beyond that, learning all this other vocabulary is not really important, because using it is not as effective, because the other person may not understand what you may be saying or what you're trying to say. All right, so do keep this in mind anytime you are talking about your work or you are introducing yourself. Now, what about professional communication really confuses many of us? What should I say? How should I keep it brief? The idea here is that, yes, you have to be very polite. Politeness is extremely important when it comes to corporate communication. However, you don't want to make it very formal. When we become very professional while speaking or very formal while speaking, we risk the other person not understanding what we're trying to say, right? Because we are overly explaining something, we're beating around the bush. So now, what does beating around the bush mean? Basically, you're talking about everything, but not what the important points or what that main piece of information you want to give. You avoid giving that because you're trying to be professional or polite. So that is something you definitely want to keep in mind when you are communicating with anyone, especially in a professional setup. All right. For anyone who's new that has joined us, welcome, welcome, welcome. Good evening. So happy to have all of you here. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments so we can definitely answer them in the course of today's lab. Now, another thing that many of us miss out on, which can actually change the way you communicate with others, is listening. I know that sounds a little odd. How does speaking have anything to do with listening? But trust me, they are very, very connected. Let me explain. When you listen to someone, and you listen to understand, not to reply. When you listen just to reply, you're waiting for a point that makes sense to you and you want to reply really quickly, right? That's something you want to avoid. When we are talking about something actively, and we're listening to someone actively, we're listening to understand what they are saying. So someone has said hello to me. Hello. So happy to have you here. If you have any questions, please add them. Please tell me where you are joining us from as well, so that I can get to know a little bit more about you, what you do, what do you expect from today's conversation, anything that I can help you with specifically. Please do add that in the comments as well. All right, now this talking about listening, I know that the best part of listening actively is that it can be used in any conversation. It doesn't have to be professional. If you listen to actually understand, that will definitely help you in every aspect of communication, not just in a professional setup. Okay, so I have a question. I'm going to answer this really quickly. What's the purpose of our live today? What's the purpose of this video? The purpose and the main goal of this video is to help you become a better communicator in the workplace, a better communicator when you're talking in a professional setup. So that's the goal here, to help you with your communication in any formal setup, really. So that's the goal, and that's what I'm here to do, and that's what I'm here to talk about. So if you have any questions, please add those so I can address them specifically. All right. Now, another thing that happens when you're listening actively to anyone, right, is that you start picking up on the way they communicate. You pick up on things that they are saying, which helps you also learn how to communicate, what what they would like to know. You can understand a lot more by just listening to them, how they are communicating something, how they are thinking about something, what information are they giving you. So this is really important. So when you listen to someone, you get to pick up on all of this. The next thing that happens when you listen to someone is also that you understand what the purpose of this conversation is. Many times when we're communicating, there is a gap in our communication because we haven't understood what the person wants. Right? So when we don't listen properly, we don't know what the person wants. So we risk giving information that the other person doesn't really want to know about. Let me give you an example of this, right? If, let's say, your manager or your team leader is talking to you about something and they want an update from you, they want some information from you about a project that you're working on. And for some reason, you haven't understood what they're saying and you're giving an update on something completely different. Now, what happens is your manager will think you don't know or you don't have an update when you do, but you just haven't understood what they want, right? Also, because we're working in such an environment where there's so many things happening so quickly, we don't have a lot of time to communicate, to explain and explain again. So when you listen, you know exactly what information they want and you can give it really quickly, right? It also avoids talking too much without giving the right type of information. Now, this is something I have personally struggled with in my communication journey, where I get confused sometimes and I don't know, and I give a lot of extra information that is not really required. Now, what happens in that is that the other person, even though I feel the information is important, the other person feels like I'm wasting time. And they asked a question for a specific reason and they don't get that information. So what I started doing to improve this is listening. And when I listen, I understand exactly what the other person wants, which helps me to focus on anything that they might want to know versus giving them information that will really, you know, not help in the long run. So that's something that you can definitely do that. Now, before I continue, let me tell you that if you have any questions, anything that you would like to know about, or anything that you are personally struggling with when it comes to your formal communication, this is the time to ask us. This is the time to tell us so that I can answer them today. So please put them in the comments so that I can answer any questions that you might have, any information that you might want that can help you improve your communication. Now, something that came up a lot when we announced this live on Instagram was that a lot of you had a lot of questions and comments about feeling anxious before a meeting, right? Feeling really anxious, feeling very scared before any meeting or before any presentation. I completely understand that. It's something that, many of us do struggle with. We get very nervous and it's very, very normal. So, firstly, understand you are not alone. Everyone feels anxious. Everyone has different reasons to feel anxious. So, please don't think that you are alone in this. And don't worry, I do have some tips and tricks to help you feel more confident before anything, an interview, a meeting, a presentation, that will definitely help you. First, always know what you want your update to be about, and always know what your role is in that meeting. Are you there to understand? Are you there to give information? Are you there to discuss something and come up with a solution? First, understand your role in that meeting. Then you can prepare for that meeting much, much better. So remember this, that's number one. Always have your mind prepared, like, okay, I know this, I have to do this is what I'm expected to do in the meeting, so you can be prepared. That's number one, very important. Also, if you need to give an update, know what your update is, the technical aspects of your update, all the information you need to give, any data points that you would need to give, any studies that you would need to show to prove your point. Have all of that ready. Once you have that base ready of your technical information, then we can work on the more finer points of communication. That's something you can do. Another thing is, like I said, I can't repeat this enough, is that you must listen more, speak less, because that will give the right type of information and the right amount of information as well. And what you can do to help you feel as confident as possible really quickly is work on your basics. Now, what do I mean by your basics? Your basics of communication, your basics of English, because that's where the real stress in a meeting comes from. I know all of you are very good at the business part, the technical part, all your knowledge is all there, but you get very confused in sentence structure. Should I say this or this? Should I say it like this or like this? Is it said like this or should I say it like this? That is where a lot of the confusion comes in. Right? Tell me if I'm right or wrong. Please tell me in the comments if I'm right or wrong. Isn't it that you know the aspects of what your update needs to be, but many times we don't know how to say it, right? So we need to practice our basics. Now, let me tell you how you can practice your basics. One is that a lot of people say this, right? Mirror. Look in front of the mirror, talk to yourself in front of the mirror, say your update in front of a mirror. Yes, that can be useful, but to a very small extent. Another tip or trick that you can use is recording yourself, just like this. set up your phone or your laptop and record yourself giving your update, giving your presentation, all the points that you want to cover, how you want to say it. When you record yourself, you have the ability to go back and see what you did right versus what you did wrong. When you do that in front of a mirror, you can't do that because you can't go back, right? So that's something that you can definitely do on your own. Beyond that, what I believe is that yes, practice is extremely important. We can't say this enough. Practice, practice, practice. Practice does make you perfect. However, the incorrect type of practice, right? When you practice the same thing incorrectly again and again and again, that incorrect way of speaking or thinking or understanding becomes your normal. You become accustomed to it. So if I mispronounce a word all my life and no one corrects me, I will always say it. I'll keep practicing it. I'll be very good at saying and using that word, but it will be incorrect. And that's something you definitely don't want. So if you feel like you're making mistakes and you cannot understand where those mistakes are, you can always meet with someone who speaks better English than you, someone who can correct you and explain those concepts with you. And you already know that you have this safe space at Clapingo where you can come, practice, learn, and improve your English by just taking, sessions with an expert who can help you with those finer points of the language where you can't understand where you're going wrong or why you're going wrong. So this is something you can definitely do, right? And in case you are already on Clapingo and you have been taking sessions on Clapingo, let me tell you about a little feature that will definitely help you. You have the option to filter speakers. And you can see that many of our speakers are experts at business English, preparing you for interviews, preparing you to communicate in a corporate setup, all of these things. So that's something you can always do. So you can filter speakers, find an expert that works for you, and just practice. So if you have that big presentation coming up or you have an interview coming up, just use that filter, find an expert who you can click with, understand really easily, and that's something that can help you improve your communication as well. Anyone who has joined us later, hello, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining us. If you have any questions, please do add them to the comments so I can answer anything that you have been struggling with when it comes to communication or communicating in a formal setup. Now's the time to ask. So please do add them in the comments section, right? So that's something that I did want to share. Additionally, if you have any other questions about anything that's confusing you, some vocabulary or some formal communication that's confusing you, now's the time to ask. I will definitely clarify all of those as well. So till now, let's recap a little bit. We've spoken about how to introduce yourself effectively. We've also spoken about what are some ways in which active listening in a formal setup can improve your language. We've also discussed certain smaller aspects of language and conversation that can help you communicate information more effectively, right? So if by any chance you've joined us a little late and you've missed out on any of this, don't worry, you can always go back and watch. And now stay tuned for a little more information that I have some more tips and tricks for you. Now, it's not just about the words you use, it's also about how you use those words. So I know many of our meetings are in person, some of them may be on live video calls that look something like this. Remember, all the time, the most important thing you can do is maintain eye contact, right? I know you want to seem more confident. That was the second, question that we got a lot of, is that how can I seem more confident? I feel very underconfident in formal setups. So here's where you can get that for sure. Remember, just maintain eye contact. When you maintain eye contact while giving your information, you will seem much more confident. So very simple trick. You don't have to do anything. Just remember, when you're talking, look at the person or the people you are talking to. So if you're talking to a lot of people, you can move your eyes and yourself from person to person, but remember to maintain eye contact. When someone talks like this or talks like this, imagine if I was talking to you like this constantly, or I was talking to you like this, or I was talking to you like this. You probably wouldn't be able to connect with me at all. and you would think I'm so confused or I don't know what I'm talking about. So I would be looking here, there, everywhere. So that doesn't give off confidence. But it doesn't take a lot to just maintain eye contact. Just maintain eye contact. It will also help you understand whether they are understanding what you're saying or not, whether you need to repeat something, put some more emphasis on something. It's very easy to do that just by maintaining a little bit of eye contact, right? And another thing that you can do that's free and very simple to do, smile. So you don't have to keep smiling all the time, but smile from time to time. It seems you seem more open, you seem more interesting when you keep smiling. So remember, small tips but can go a long way. So avoid all your nervous tics, trying to play with your nails, or moving from place to place, or moving too much while talking. But yes, use your hands, use your eyes to exude that confidence that you want. So I have a question. How do you develop the kind of vocabulary the way people use in news debates? Right, good question. Thank you, Ashish, for your question. Let me definitely give you an answer for that. Yes, how people learn new vocabularies, how they expose themselves to that type of vocabulary. So the people who are debating, or if they're giving their opinion on something, they have read a lot, they've read a lot of information. And as they read that information, they accumulate that kind of vocabulary. So if you want to use better vocabulary, and if you know that, okay, I want this type of vocabulary, you need to expose yourself more to that type of vocabulary to learn it. That's point number one, is where you expose yourself to that vocabulary, so you start learning it. Now there is point number two, which is the difficult part, which everyone finds difficult, but I have a trick for you, is how do I actually use it? How do I use them in my sentences? The best and the easiest way that you can use that vocabulary is as soon as you learn any word, whether it is advanced English or simple English, any word that you learn, any new word, the best way to do it is by actually making a sentence there and then with that vocabulary. So let's take the word accumulate, right? I learned this word today. I pick up this word accumulate. Now I will make 3 or 4 sentences with the word accumulate in my normal setup. So something that I could actually use in my day-to-day life. So let's say I'm working in an office. I would say, okay, let me accumulate the resources to work on this project. Or you could say, let me accumulate this information so that I can give you a more informed answer. Right? Now, what you do is when you make sentences immediately with words that you learn, new vocabulary that you learn, it becomes easier to actually use it when the situation arises. All right. So many times we learn a lot of vocabulary and we forget it because we don't put them into sentences. Think of English and grammar as math. It's like math, right? If I teach you a new formula and you never practice it and you never actually use it for in a sum, you'll probably forget how to use it. So similarly, if you learn a new formula or a new word, use it immediately so it becomes something that you remember and can use. So always make sentences that you can use in your day-to-day life. So it will take a little bit of imagination and a little bit of work, and you can really do this. You don't even have to write down these sentences. I know sometimes we don't have time for that. You can just say them out loud. And when you say them out loud, that can make a huge difference. So thank you for that. I also wanted to talk to you a little bit about communication and vocabulary, right? Many times we use certain words that make us sound less confident or less formal. Let me give you an example of that. When we use the word very, very often, right? So if I say, I'm very happy that you did this, and I'm very upset that you did that, and I'm very this, and I'm very that. When we say very, 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 very often, what happens is it shows that you don't know other vocabulary. There's always better vocabulary to use. There are so many new words that are being added to the English language every single day. There are so many more appropriate words to use at all times. So instead of sticking to very or making sentences by using these very, 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 there is a better word to use, right? So that's something that can also enhance your vocabulary really quickly. Now, let me give you one example of that. Very happy. You could say, I am pleased. So this project makes me very happy. You just say, I am very pleased with this project, or I'm very pleased with the progress you have made in this project, right? So instead of saying very happy, you can use the word pleased. There are many more words. If you know any words that are synonyms or that mean very happy, please put them in the chat so we can all learn together. So you can always use the word pleased. It's a very nice formal word to use, and it does give out the right information. It gives out what you want to say, right? Similarly, if I had to say I'm very upset with the progress that has been made, I'm very upset that no progress has been made in this project, right? So instead of saying I'm very upset, you could say I'm very disappointed in the lack of progress that has been made in this project, or I'm very disappointed by this. When you say it like this, it can make a lot of difference to the way you communicated. Yes, Ashish, elated also works. So that's also something you can use. And elated is something you could use when you're very, very happy. So if you're just happy or very happy, pleased. If you're very, very happy, elated. All right. So AJ is saying good evening, good evening. So happy to see you. Yes, over the moon. You're very content. I'm so happy to see all these different synonyms come up in the comments. So thank you for that. Now tell me if you have any synonyms for the word very upset. Very upset. I told you about disappointed. Anything else that comes to mind, right? Because you want to be very careful. You don't want to sound very rude. So you have to be mindful of these. So if anyone has any suggestions for very upset, please add them to the comments. Another thing is that we use a lot of filler words. What are filler words when we speak? Words that are just added but don't make much sense. They don't add value to the sentence. Let me give you examples. Of course, the most common filler words are of course, that's one. But there are some other filler words that are actual words that we insert into sentences, but they don't make that much sense. So that's something you want to avoid doing. And let me give you examples, and and please tell me if you use those or not. Okay, very common one, like. I was like, and then like, very common filler word. Another one is basically this happened. Basically that happened. So basically is another very common filler word that you want to avoid while speaking. Another very common one is just. Just yesterday this happened. Just this happened. Or just two people messaged, or just two emails were sent out. So just also makes something sound like it's lesser than it is. So you can avoid using just. And another very important one is actually. Actually, this happened. Now, when you say actually, we know it happened. We know for sure. So you don't have to say that it actually happened because we know it did. All right. So that's something you can definitely do. Now, I also have some other very important ways for you to introduce yourself and to say something when you're trying to talk to someone. So very often when we're interrupting, so I have a little thing, you can take a screenshot of this if you want. I hope you can see it really well. So if you're interrupting, you could say, excuse me for interrupting, or may I add something, or excuse me, I would like to add something to this. So that's a much better way to interrupt. If you are in a formal setup, you can do that as well. Now, what can you do when you're trying to share an opinion or you want to give your opinion? Keep it simple, right? I told you, don't have to be very formal, don't have to do a lot. You can always just very simply, I know there's a little bit of a glare coming, so I'm going to put it out here so you can see it. I'm not sure if it's switching, so I'm going to read it out anyway. So what you can do is that if you want to share your opinion, you could say, I feel that, or a very nice way to say it is, the way I see things is that. So you can always do that as well when you want to share your opinion. Now, when you're asking for an opinion, it's very simple to ask, how do you feel about this? Or how would you feel about this? So you can always say this as well. That's another thing that you can do. When you want to agree with someone, all right, when you want to agree with someone, you could say, I feel, or this is how I think, or the way I do. Very simply, you could say, I have to agree with you, or I do agree with you, or you could say, that's the way I think of it too, or that's the way I feel too. So you can always say that as well. Now let's talk about something that's a little difficult sometimes it can be a little confusing, is when you have to disagree with someone. You want to say, they are saying something, but you don't agree, you want to say something else. So to disagree, and I'm hoping that this is visible to you clearly and it's not switched. If it is switched, I'm so sorry. We'll find a way to send this out to you, that you could disagree by saying, that's a valid point, but, or you can agree with someone or disagree with someone. Sometimes you may want to make a suggestion, you want to recommend something, you want to suggest something, and you can keep it simple. You don't have to make it very formal. You can just say, why don't we, or how about we do this, or why don't we do this, or how about we add to the budget, or how about we reduce the budget on this and allocate more funds here. So you can always give a suggestion like this. So how about we do this, or how about we do that, or why don't we do this? That would be something you can use when you're making a suggestion. And the last one of these that I have for you is when you want to clarify something. Effective communication is always about clarifying and understanding what the other person is saying and ensuring that what you have said is also understood by the other person. So you could always say, could you please repeat that? Or if I understood correctly, this is what you said. Or I think it might be of, it might help me if you explain this again. Could you please repeat this? I don't think I quite understood. Or you could say, I didn't quite catch that. Could you please repeat your last point or your second last point? So clarification is always really, really helpful when it comes to communication. It avoids misunderstandings. It avoids any sort of communication gaps, especially in a formal or work setup. You should always have some clarity. If you have any questions, please do add them in the chat so I can answer them. And anyone who has joined us now, thank you so much for joining. We've spoken a lot about communication. We've spoken a lot about how to keep your communication formal, how to improve your communication. And I do have some questions for you. Please, while you're adding your questions, please also answer this for me. What did you think was the most useful part of today's conversation? What did you learn? What is something that you picked up today that you will be able to use? So please tell me what you have been able to use. Even if you're watching this later, do add this in the comments so I can understand what you liked about it, what you learned from today. Was it useful or not? What did you find most useful? Is there anything you would like to know a little more about, something that you would like us to explain in more detail, or we could cover in our other content, maybe in our videos, and explain more about? So if you have any questions like that, please add them in the comments as well. So if you have any questions or anything that you would like to share, please do that in the comments, right? So please, what did you like the most about the live session today? What would you like to know more about? What would you like to know about in more detail? Please add that as well. And also, I would like to know, what else would you like us to talk about? So today's conversation was just a little introduction to corporate communication, communicating in a formal setup. So this was just the basics. We have much more we can discuss for sure. So if there's anything else that you would like to know more about, please do add that in the comments as well. And don't worry, if you're watching this later, you can add it then, and the team will be looking at it, and we will definitely take your recommendations into consideration, right? So please add that. And if you are looking for a safe space where you can practice all this, you can ensure that you get yourself corrected, you get to practice on a regular basis. I know it is difficult to practice and you don't have the right environment to practice, which can affect your communication. Don't worry, we have this safe space for you. All you need to do is invest 99 rupees in yourself, take a demo session, understand how our tutors can help you, how our experts can help you in any area of communication, of English that you need assistance in. Just all you need to do is just take a demo session, understand it really, really easily, so that you can improve your communication, you can take your career to the next level, right? So that's all that we had for you today, but don't worry, we'll be back very soon. We have some exciting plans and a lot more to share with you, a lot of tips and tricks to share with you. So we will be coming back really, really soon with all that information. Yes. So if you have any questions, please send it to us in the comment section. You can also message us on Instagram, or you can speak to us on Instagram. You're most welcome, Ashish. I'm so happy that this has been useful and you have been able to learn something from today's experience. And we'll be back very soon. So stay tuned to our YouTube and our Instagram, because we will share a lot of information about what's coming up next. And anything that you would like us to cover, anything that you would like to know more about, please share that as well. And we will definitely do that. And I would like to leave you with one parting thought, that I know communication can be a little daunting, a little scary, and it can make you nervous, but always keep it simple. Don't overthink it, because the moment you overthink it, you complicate it for yourself and you tend to make more mistakes. So don't overthink it. Keep it as simple as possible. As long as you don't sound like you're talking to your friends in the college canteen, you're doing much better than you think you are. So that's all you need to do to sound more formal, to sound more effective and efficient in any formal or professional setup. And we'll be back really soon with a lot more information. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being with us. And I hope you have a good rest of your day and a good week. And thank you. And we'll see you all really soon. Bye bye. Good evening. Thank you.